In the profound silence of a spring dawn in 1623, a single, piercing scream shattered the tranquility of the Topkapi Palace. It was not the cry of a soldier fallen in combat, nor the desperate last plea of a captured foe. It was the shriek of a young girl, merely 15 years old, Princess Fatma Sultan, the daughter of the most formidable ruler in the known world. Her cries sliced through the grand corridors like blades of ice, causing even the hardened eunuchs guarding the palace doors to flinch in terror, too petrified to intervene. In a moment shielded from all eyes, what transpired that night was not a simple family misfortune. It was the unveiling of a piece of the empire's dark history, the terrible price every daughter of a sultan was forced to pay, a price etched into her very body and soul, a truth that history has tried to conceal for 6 centuries. Fatima's screams were not born from physical wounds. They were the sounds of a ritual, a deeply rooted ancient practice designed to shatter the spirit long before it ever touched the flesh. It was a custom that condemned Ottoman princesses to a life of shadows before they even blossomed into womanhood. For more than 600 years, the Ottoman Empire upheld a matrimonial preparation so sinister, so diabolically refined, that not even the most bitter enemies of the throne would have ever wished it upon their own daughters. This piece of dark history was meticulously erased from the official chronicles, hidden away behind gilded walls and elaborate tapestries. It only resurfaced recently, thanks to clandestine documents discovered within Istanbul's archives in 2019. All across the world, millions of women, from peasants to noble ladies, and even queens, fantasized about the life of an Ottoman princess, draped in the finest silks and adorned with priceless jewels, attended to by innumerable servants. But behind those radiant walls was not luxury, but a living nightmare, a torment so unbearable that many of these young girls prayed for death itself, rather than endure the fate of their marriage beds. And now, in this account, you, just as I, will become a witness to a truth that has been locked away for 600 years. Prepare yourself, because what you are about to learn is no fairy tale, but a tale of horror disguised as imperial ceremony. Before we proceed, I ask for only one thing. If this story has already made your heart race, please signify your interest with a simple gesture. Subscribe to the channel and, in the comments below, tell us which queen or princess's destiny you wish for us to uncover next. Will you choose Marie Antoinette, Cleopatra, or perhaps Anne Boleyn? Your voice will direct us to the next chapter of dark history that the powerful have tried to bury. Now, come with me and let us reveal why so many Ottoman princesses, born into palaces of pure gold, longed for the cold embrace of the grave, rather than the supposed destiny of their wedding night. The Ottoman Empire, as vast as a boundless ocean, extended its dominion for over 6 centuries, from the year 1299 to 1922. Its mighty armies thundered across 3 separate continents, their power resonating from the very walls of Vienna to the blistering deserts of Yemen. After the historic fall of Constantinople in 1453, the city was transformed into the beating heart of Ottoman supremacy. Renamed Istanbul, it housed the magnificent Topkapi Palace, the most brilliant jewel of imperial power. Within those formidable walls, golden chambers and perfumed courtyards shaped the destinies not only of entire kingdoms, but of individual souls. Concealed behind veils and winding corridors, the imperial harem constituted a world entirely of its own. At the zenith of its splendor, it contained more than 800 women. It was a universe woven from silk and silence, where every single breath was monitored, and every gesture could signify either a meteoric rise or a devastating ruin in the year 1530. When Suleiman the Magnificent bestowed the unprecedented title of Haseki Sultan upon his wife Hurrem, the harem ceased to be merely a domain of pleasure. It evolved into an arena of intricate intrigue, fragile alliances, and silent wars, waged among women, concubines, who were mostly Christian slaves captured across Europe or purchased from North African markets, all of whom entered the harem with aspirations of ascending the ranks. Their days were a regimen of music, intricate embroidery, poetry, and the rituals of absolute obedience. They all hoped to capture the Sultan's attention, to exchange their chains for a taste of power. The greatest irony is that these young women, torn from their homes and sold like common goods, often possessed far more freedom than the Sultan's own daughters. From 1533 to 1656, during a period historians now call the Sultanate of Women, Female power within the empire soared to unprecedented heights. Figures like Kursem Sultan and Turhan Hatice Sultan effectively reigned from behind the veil, masterfully guiding state councils, determining the course of wars, and shaping the very destiny of the empire with an iron will. However, while these former concubines ascended to become the hidden empresses, the true princesses, those born of royal blood, were ensnared in a much darker labyrinth, a forgotten chapter of the empire's dark history. They became mere pawns in the grand political chess match of the empire, treated as human currency to seal treaties, quell rebellions, or purchase the loyalty of powerful pashas. Into this treacherous world, Princess Fatma Sultan was born in 1606, the daughter of Sultan Ahmed I and the formidable Kursem Sultan, the very woman who would later command the empire from the shadows. Fatma's early years were a gilded illusion of beauty and scholarship. She drifted through fragrant gardens, delved into the study of astronomy, and pored over ancient Arabic and Persian manuscripts. Scholars lauded her sharp intellect, while court chroniclers celebrated her stunning beauty. She was a true child prodigy, achieving fluency in 4 different languages, crafting calligraphy with the grace of a master poet, and nurturing a deep hunger to unlock the mysteries of the cosmos. She would confidently debate seasoned scholars on matters of history, law, and geography. Her exceptional brilliance illuminated the palace halls, yet tragically, none of it mattered. Her fate had been irrevocably sealed long before she ever took her first breath. From the very moment of her birth, her life was never her own. She was destined to be bartered in marriage, a living token of political allegiance. Regardless of her own desires, the man selected for her was Damat Kara Mustafa Pasha, a battle-hardened commander, a full 20 years her senior, a man who had cemented his loyalty to the throne on the battlefields against Persia. For him, this marriage was a stepping stone to immense power. For her, it was the dawn of a profound tragedy. Just 3 months prior to her wedding, Fatma was forced into the dreaded process known as Tahvil and Mubarak, the so-called sacred education, a grim facet of the empire's dark history. This harrowing ritual was reserved exclusively for princesses. It was the refined product of centuries of psychological manipulation, meticulously designed to systematically crush their royal pride and remold them into perfect instruments of obedience. The woman tasked with overseeing Fatma's preparation was Gulnar Hatun, a stern woman of 60 winters, the head of the harem, and a veteran of more than a dozen of these princess trainings. Under her unblinking gaze, Fatma was led into the Angelino Dais, the bride's chamber. This chamber, though lavishly adorned with Persian carpets and ebony panels, was no sanctuary, it was a prison. Every intricate detail relentlessly whispered of duty and absolute submission. From the break of dawn until noon, she was subjected to endless rituals of reverence. She was required to master 18 distinct forms of bowing, specific postures for greeting, for serving food, for reclining, and for waiting in complete silence for her husband's arrival. Even the way she walked was no longer her own. She was drilled in Urash and Sesh, a series of measured steps with her head tilted at a precise 30-degree angle, her hands forbidden from ever rising above her heart. Each calculated movement was designed to strip away her royal dignity, systematically remaking her into a docile, silent shadow. Yet, the most cruel torment was reserved for her speech. Her vocabulary was forcibly reduced to a mere 43 approved words, consisting only of expressions of gratitude, total acceptance, humble requests, and meek apologies. Any deviation from this script, any flicker of independent thought, was met with harsh punishment, forced fasting, solitary confinement, or public humiliation before the entire harem. Her compliance was relentlessly tested by a tribunal of women and eunuchs, presided over by none other than her own mother, Kursem. Even she judged her daughter not as a beloved child, but as a valuable coin in the empire's cold marketplace of power. And yet, the most disturbing part of this preparation was still to come, hidden deep beneath the palace. In subterranean chambers, exact replicas of the bridal suites had been constructed. It was here that Fatma faced Talim and Gurdik the chilling rehearsals for her wedding night. She was compelled to interact with life-sized wax mannequins, anatomically correct figures, expertly crafted by Venetian artisans. Stern, cold instructors commanded her every move, forcing her to perform gestures and acts that no young woman of her age should ever have to know. Every single one of her reactions, including her tears, Her resistance and her palpable fear was meticulously documented in secret records, revealing the true dark history of this practice. The more she fought back, the more severe her conditioning became. Gradually, the girl who once dreamed of charting the stars was systematically broken, reduced to silence. Her inner brilliance was extinguished, and her body was conditioned for absolute obedience. Her spirit bent into submission. Princess Fatima was no longer a daughter of emperors. She was an apprentice to her fate. A week before the wedding, the regime grew even harsher. Fatma Sultan was transferred to the Gelin Kosku, the bride's pavilion, an isolated chamber where no sound from outside could penetrate. Here, every aspect of her existence was controlled. What she ate was prescribed: pomegranates, honey, almonds, goat's milk, spices from Yemen. Even the way she bathed was regulated. Each day, attendants performed purification baths with oils scented with valerian, poppy, and orange blossom. These elixirs, prepared by alchemists trained in Cordoba and Samarkand, contained secret substances. Some calmed the body, others dulled the will, and a few induced a strange sense of drifting away from the self. The walls of the pavilion were draped with tapestries, embroidered with scenes of ideal wives, obedient, fertile, submissive, promised eternal rewards for their loyalty. And if that wasn't enough, Venetian mirrors were strategically placed so that Fatima was forced to observe herself constantly. This practice, called muraqaba, was once a Sufi exercise of mystical self-reflection, but here it became a psychological weapon. She was made to police herself, to watch even her most private thoughts in this prison of silk and mirrors. Fatima began to realize the full truth. She no longer belonged to herself, her body, her voice. Her very mind had been molded into an instrument of obedience. The preparation had achieved its purpose, not only breaking her, but erasing the girl who once dreamed of the stars. The appointed day arrived, March 15th, 1623. From sunrise, Istanbul throbbed like an overflowing heart. The streets filled with processions, music, and incense. Inside Topkapi Palace, banquets were laid on golden plates. Dancers from Persia and Andalusia performed. Musicians sang the empire's glory. Janissaries displayed their strength before the Sultan's eyes. For the people, it was a vision of paradise. For Princess Fatima, it was the prelude to a sentence. Chroniclers wrote that while the guests laughed and feasted, Fatima sat in silence, her lips dry, her gaze empty. The palace doctors noted what we would today call panic attacks: trembling, cold sweats despite the cool March air, complete loss of appetite, shallow breathing so severe they feared for her life. The public spectacle glowed with splendor, but inside, her terror grew like a spreading shadow. When the final cup was raised and the civilians departed, the most dreaded procession began. Fatma was escorted to the nuptial pavilion, a special building in the private gardens, designed from plans dating back to Mehmed the Conqueror. Octagonal in shape, it rose in 3 levels. Each level had a purpose: purification, submission, and consummation. The architecture was no accident. Every corridor, every chamber was meant to reinforce her vulnerability, to turn the ceremony into a total act of surrender. The first level, Taja Khatu, was devoted to purification. Here, Fatma underwent hours of ritual baths, marble tubs filled with rose water, essences of sandalwood, ambergris from Somalia. Alchemists supplied ointments mixed with diluted opium, mandrake extract, and secret compounds that induced calm compliance, even ecstasy. The doctors described her state as one of missionary trance, the body yielding while the soul screamed in silence. The second level, Teslim Khatu, was the floor of surrender. Fatima was dressed in her bridal attire, white silk embroidered with gold, pearls from the Persian Gulf, sewn into the fabric. At first glance, it was a gown of majesty, but it was also a cage. Hidden cords and clasps made it easier to restrain her. The crown weighed heavily. The gown was engineered to contort her posture, while anklets and bracelets shackled her every move, and shoes with thick soles deliberately slowed her pace. Her dress was a gilded cage, crafted from the finest silks. While Fatma was being metamorphosed into a breathing emblem of submission, her future husband, Kara Mustafa Pasha, was undergoing a starkly contrasting preparation. Flanked by his advisors and veteran commanders, he was schooled in the art of psychological warfare against a princess of imperial lineage. Intimidation tactics, phrases crafted to degrade, techniques of physical assertion. Every detail was part of the empire's dark history, meticulously planned to ensure there would be no space for doubt. There could be no room for resistance. At last, Fatma was escorted to the third level, to Sifaf Khatu, the chamber where the union would be sealed. Its walls were draped in tapestries that glorified military conquest, cities overthrown, armies vanquished, and princesses taken captive. This visual narrative was no accident. It forged an unmistakable link between triumph on the battlefield and dominance in the marital chamber. The very furniture was designed for subjugation, featuring beds with concealed restraints, cushions steeped in tranquilizing oils, and lighting arranged to dissolve any will to resist. It was here, within this sanctuary of power and control, that Fatma confronted the knight she had feared above all others. Once the doors of the Sifa Khatu swung shut behind the entourage, Fatma was abandoned to face her husband alone, and medical accounts from that era chronicle what unfolded next. They describe it as a complete shattering of the spirit. The young woman who had withstood months of relentless conditioning and shame could no longer form a coherent response. Her frame shook without cease, her voice faded into a barely audible whisper, and her gaze drifted, lost in a world far removed from her own. The imperial physicians labelled this condition Sokma Itam, a state of total shock. Kara Mustafa Pasha, a man hardened by war and accustomed to conquest, initially mistook her state for haughtiness, a defiant will that he was meant to crush, and so he deployed the very methods he had been taught. He unleashed intimidating words, gestures of power, and calculated physical contact. Yet what he encountered was not defiance, it was a profound emptiness. There was no fight to win, merely a hollow void, for Fatma's consciousness had retreated into the depths of dissociation. It was as if her very soul had vacated its physical shell as a final act of survival. When the act was finally completed, after hours of fruitless effort, hidden observers recorded it as deeply traumatic for both. Coded Persian manuscripts speak of internal hemorrhaging, recurrent fainting spells, and what the physicians termed Aryu Sukmek, the departure of the soul. From that night forward, Fatma was irrevocably changed, and her subsequent behavior, a testament to this chapter of dark history, unsettled even the most severe of the harem's disciplinarians. She lapsed into a state of selective mutism, speaking only in whispers, and then only when directly addressed, while her desire for food disappeared entirely. This forced her attendants to feed her by hand. She would be overcome by hours-long fits of inconsolable weeping for no apparent cause. But worst of all, she contracted what historians of the time called the sickness of fear. The simple presence of any man, including trusted eunuchs, would plunge her into a state of terror, triggering rapid breathing, profuse sweating, and fainting spells. Palace doctors diagnosed her with what they termed virginal melancholy, a condition they considered common among princesses following their wedding night. In modern terminology, it was profound and irreversible trauma, a wound etched so deeply into her soul it could never heal. They attempted various cures, herbal remedies, soothing music, even Sufi spiritual practices, but nothing could rekindle the life within her. The brilliant young woman who once engaged in debates with scholars, the inquisitive spirit who cherished astronomy and poetry, had vanished forever, leaving only a faint, compliant shadow in her place. She was vacant, lifeless. Her treasured books collected dust, her scientific instruments lay untouched, and the gardens that once echoed with her joyful steps fell silent. The daughter of the mightiest sultan had been reduced to a mere phantom of her potential, a tragic footnote in the empire's dark history, and her marriage to Kara Mustafa Pasha devolved into a cold, mechanical affair. There were children and public ceremonies, all the outward appearances of a normal life. But behind the palace's closed doors, only an immense silence and a vast distance remained. As for Mustafa, his later memoirs hint that he sought solace in ceaseless military campaigns and the haze of opium, desperately trying to escape the guilt of having been the instrument of such a brutal ritual that destroyed her. Fatima lived 29 more years in this hollow state. She became a figure of ceremony, a mother by duty, a wife without a voice. In 1652, she died at the age of 46. Official records list her cause as a brain fever, but the date of her death fell on the anniversary of her wedding. To many in the court, it was no coincidence. That day, the weight of memory closed finally upon her soul. The tragedy of Fatma Sultan was not an isolated case. It was a mirror of a pattern repeated through generations of Ottoman princesses. Palace records, unearthed centuries later, revealed that dozens of royal daughters endured the same fate. Some were left marked by mutism, others tried to escape through madness or through death, and a few simply vanished from the chronicles as if they had never existed at all. The machinery of empire, so precise in its protocols, knew how to erase inconvenient traces. What could not be erased was dressed in euphemism, softened into words of ceremony, or hidden behind ornate phrases in official records. But the truth had left scars in secret writings, in coded documents, and whispered testimonies that survived in the shadows until modern times. Some of these princesses, despite their conditioning, tried to resist. Records recently translated speak of royal daughters who faked their own deaths to avoid a second marriage. Others created secret codes to communicate with sisters, silenced by the same rituals, and a few with unimaginable courage petitioned the Sultan directly for divorce, challenging a system thought to be unbreakable. These stories, buried for centuries in forbidden archives, remind us that even in the deepest darkness, sparks of resistance can survive. Women who were raised to surrender still found ways to whisper no into the silence. Fatma's tragedy lays bare an uncomfortable truth. Absolute power does not always protect those who embody it. Instead, it can devour them. While the world imagined Ottoman princesses as radiant figures surrounded by riches, their reality was one of invisible chains, a system of rituals so finely tuned that it sacrificed human lives to preserve alliances and political stability. The harem in the popular imagination became a place of silks, perfumes, and intrigue, but in reality, it was also a theatre of imposed silences and smothered tears. The stories we were told as tales of princesses were, in truth, constructions of politics, narratives that devoured the daughters of the Sultan themselves. And so we arrive at the inevitable question: how many other secrets remain hidden in the archives of ancient palaces? What rituals were buried in the courts of Europe, Russia, or China? What terrible prices did women pay to uphold the grandeur of dynasties? Fatma Sultan's story is not just a chapter of Ottoman history, it is a reminder of how easily power can transform its own children into sacrifices, how the splendor of crowns often rests on foundations of human suffering. For centuries, official history worked to erase these truths. Chroniclers who served the throne painted the harem as a place of luxury and refinement. They spoke of jewels, music, and poetry, rarely of fear, despair, or broken spirits. But hidden beneath the surface, in forgotten manuscripts and medical notes, a different story pulsed. It was a story of young women silenced, of lives rewritten, of tragedies disguised as ceremonies. The scream that echoed through Topkapi Palace in 1623 was not the only one. It was simply the one that left enough of a trace for us to hear it now. To know Fatma's story is to strip away the mask that history often wears. It reminds us that behind every glittering palace stood lives consumed by duty, rituals, and silence. It shows us that power, no matter how vast, is never as golden as it appears, and it compels us to ask how many voices have been buried under the weight of ceremony, waiting for a voice to finally hear them. If the tragic account of Fatma Sultan has left you shaken, if her story has echoed in your soul, then embark with us on this journey to expose the grim realities concealed within palace walls. Subscribe to delve deeper into this dark history, share this account with those who dare to look beyond the fairy tales, and tell us in the comments whose destiny you want us to uncover next. Shall we unmask the secrets of a Russian Tsarina, so feared that even her own mother trembled? Or an empress of China, bound by macabre rituals of power? Or perhaps a European princess, bartered like a mere pawn to forge a fragile alliance? Your voice will direct us to the next chapter of dark history we reveal, because only by confronting these buried truths can we tear away the gilded facade of the past and finally hear the silenced whispers of those who were sacrificed in the relentless game of power.